The book got some good reviews. Ralph Hattersley wrote for a popular photography magazine, and Beaumont Newhall was a photographic historian, and W. Eugene Smith was a photojournalist, and at that time he was considered one of the 10 best in the world. So the next summer, the second summer, I thought I'd try out photojournalism, and I got a job with W. Eugene Smith. These are some of Smith's pictures. I really respected his art and also his heart. He really wanted to help people with his photographs. He took a series of pictures of inmates of a leper colony in Africa. He was also a World War II photographer. He thought if people saw the horrors of war, they would take steps to end war. He was idealistic, you could say. But in working for him, I got to know him a little bit, and I became very disillusioned. Because for one thing, he was an alcoholic. For another thing, not only was he divorced, but he had a terrible, terrible relationship with his former wife. He wasn't even on speaking terms with his children. And he was living with a Japanese woman, half his age, and they had a tumultuous relationship. So I was still very confused about my life and what I should do. And in college, I had met another student who was also majoring in photography, and he went to India. And from India, he wrote to me and said, "You should come to India. The photography's great in India." So in 1971, I went to India. India was a very unusual experience for me, coming from the West. You don't see things like that, like this in the West. And what was especially odd to me is that the people around this person don't seem very interested in what he's doing. But it was also extraordinarily beautiful in parts, breathtakingly beautiful. This is on the Jalangi River in West Bengal. And ordinary things were done in extraordinary ways for me, coming from the West. Even the animals were unusual. I had never seen a hog-eating stool before. And the street dogs, I had never seen a street dog before, but all of a sudden the term took on meaning for me when I was in India. And they use animals as we use trucks in the West to take things from one place to another. And there were also some disappointments. Some people who were supposed to be holy were not acting in a holy way. By and by, it got very hot for my friend John and I. We weren't used to the intense heat of India. So we decided to go to Nepal. We first went to Kathmandu, and then we went to a small town called Pokhara. And we started hiking up the Himalayas. We had heavy backpacks. And all day we'd go up and up and up. And then in the evening we'd come to a small village where the homes had no locks on their doors. And the residents would invite us in. And they would share their vegetables and rice with us. And we had cashew nuts and raisins that we would share with them. And it was a very family-like atmosphere, although we were completely strangers. So that was a very unique experience for me. Finally, we got to 10,000 feet, which at that time of the year was the snow line, and we found an abandoned cowshed, and we decided to rest for 3 days. And then from the very bottom of his backpack, my friend John pulled out a blue paperback and gave it to me and said, "You should read this." And that was Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So I sat there surrounded by these snow-capped peaks, trying to read this Bhagavad Gita as it is, and I found that I really did not understand it. And yet at the same time, I had a very strong sense that this book could give me direction in my life. It could actually give me knowledge that would lead to values, that would lead to happiness. So it was a unique experience. And after Nepal, we went back to India, and as fate would have it, we went to a town in India where the people are living the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. we went to Vrindavan. And we spent a month in Vrindavan. The essence of Bhagavad Gita is to always think of Krishna and to never forget Krishna. And in Vrindavan, the residents very much did that. And that month was really transformative for me, because where I had come from, the whole thrust of life was get a good education so you can get a good job. When you have a good job, you'll have lots of money. Then you can enjoy comforts, and you can enjoy some prestige, and be happy. But what I found practically was that although people had education, and good jobs, and comforts, and some power, and prestige, and influence, there was a noticeable lack of happiness. In fact, there was a good amount of dissatisfaction. And yet in Vrindavan, by contrast, the people did not have much in terms of education and money and comforts, and yet there was a palpable sense of contentment. So I had to really stop and try to look at that. I found that you didn't really need a lot to live, as was evidenced by the way people lived in Vrindavan. And yet, even with apparently minimal physical comforts, they had a great sense within them of richness. So in India, my friend John and I, we had the great fortune to meet the author of Bhagavad Gita as it is, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we both became his students. And I spent the next 25 years studying his Bhagavad Gita. And then I thought I'd really like to explain this book so that even a child could understand it. So I wrote and illustrated a Bhagavad Gita for children, our most dear friend. And by the grace of God, it does well on Amazon sometimes. So these are some pages from this book. It begins as Krishna begins in the Gita by explaining that we are not these bodies, that we are the soul within the body. And it's actually the soul that gives life to the body. When there is life present, it means their soul is present, whether it's a body of a bug or a tree or a bird or a fish or a human being. If there's life, it means the soul is present. Krishna also explains in the Gita that the body goes through so many changes, from birth, growth, dwindling, and finally death. But the soul does not go through these changes. The soul is eternal. He also gives the analogy that just as when our clothes become old, we give them up and we get new clothes, so in the same way, when our body becomes old and useless, the soul gives that body up and it acquires another body, a new body. Krishna also says, to paraphrase in the Gita, when you understand the soul, you'll be joyful and will never forget your higher spiritual nature. Even if great trouble comes, you will not be disturbed. When you understand the soul, you will see that all living beings are part of me, the Supreme Spirit, God. You will see that they are my children and are spiritually equal. And you will be kind to all living beings, knowing that they are all dear to me. So our personal story continues that my friend John and I, who also became Prabhupada's student, Prabhupada also married us. We are still married to this day. And we have two children. The girl in the pink dress on the right is our older daughter, Rasamrita. Krishna also gives the analogy that everything rests on him as pearls rest on a thread. He says that he is the knower of past and present and future. He is the creator of the material world and the spiritual world. There is no truth above him. Not a blade of grass moves without his desire. And he is also the most dear friend of everyone. So when this project was complete, I thought I'd try to do a more complete Bhagavad Gita for adults, an illustrated Bhagavad Gita for adults. And by Krishna's grace, this won an award some years ago. So this is an illustration from this book. This is my father-in-law. And on the right, he was in his 20s. And on the left, he's in his 80s. So the body has changed completely, but it's the same person because the same soul is residing within that body. The Gita also explains that for whoever is embodied, for every embodied soul, they must go through birth, old age, disease, and finally death. This is inevitable for embodied souls. The soul is termed marginal energy, just like the beach is the margin between the ocean and the water. So sometimes the land is covered by water. The beach is the margin between the water and the land, so sometimes the land is covered with water, and sometimes the water recedes. So similarly, sometimes we, as spiritual entities, are covered by material nature. And at that time, we think, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, I'm this many years old, I'm Indian, I'm American. We have so many designations that we identify with. But sometimes, by the grace of Guru, by the grace of God, that material covering recedes. And then we can understand I'm none of those designations. I'm a spiritual being. I'm part and parcel of God. Also, the analogy is there that the body is like a cage and the soul is like a bird. So at the time of death, the soul leaves the body just as a bird flies out of a cage. So this is my husband with our younger daughter, and this also illustrates a very important principle of Bhagavad Gita, that the father gives everything to the daughter. You could say there's nothing the daughter has that hasn't been given by the father. And yet when the daughter takes a cracker, a simple cracker, and offers it to the father with love, that gives so much pleasure to the father. So in the same way, God has given us everything that we have. There is nothing we have that has not come from God. But if we take simple fruits and vegetables, flowers, and offer them to God with love, that gives him pleasure. He is a person and he feels our love for him and responds. Krishna also says in the Gita that there are godly and ungodly people living side by side throughout the world. And through the teachings of the Gita, we can learn to distinguish the godly from the ungodly and then associate with the godly so that we ourselves may also become godly. So while we were doing these different projects, my family and I were moving to different cities in America for our other work, and eventually moved to Los Angeles. We actually wanted to be close to my father-in-law because he was so elderly. And when he passed away, we realized we could move anywhere at that point. So we decided to move to a remote place in British Columbia, Canada. It's called Sharanagati. Sharanagati is a community of people who are dedicated to following the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. And it's 1,600 acres. 1,600 acres. Very, very beautiful. We purchased this small house there. Another unique feature of Sharanagati is that it's off the grid. There is no power coming from the powerhouse. So under the windows on the right, you see two rectangles. Those are solar panels. We would capture energy from the sun's rays, and that energy would be fed into batteries. And from that energy from the batteries, we had lights, we had computers, we had telephones. But what we did not have was an electrical bill from the electric company because our electricity was homemade. And there we felt very close to Krishna's elements, the earth, the water, the sky. Many of these pictures are taken from the front porch of our home in Sharanagati. This is Lake Sharanagati, shining through the fir trees, and in the back is a hill the residents have named Govardhan. On the top there's a shrine. So I started writing about this experience of being in Sharanagati. I divided the work into 4 parts, based on the teachings also of Bhagavad Gita. The first part is harmony within. Because the understanding is that we really can't experience harmony externally until we have harmony in our own hearts. And Krishna explains in the Gita that to be successful on this path, we must be determined, resolute in our purpose. In our garden, we had many ants, and I noticed that when the ant colony was disturbed, every ant seemed to know what to do. They didn't seem to become depressed. Humans, when there's obstacles, very often we become depressed and disturbed, but the ants just remain somehow focused. There's so many lessons we can learn from nature. So similarly, Krishna says that for us to be successful on the spiritual path, we must be resolute in our determination. We had summer camp in Sharanagati, and for one project, the campers took an old tree that had grown on the property, and they made 3 logs. They took the rest of the wood, they ran it through our own sawmill to make planks, and then they nailed the planks onto the logs to make this raft, and they paddled around on Lake Sharanagati. This is our younger daughter with her own horse. The children there had their own horses. And part 2 of this project was harmony with the earth and her creatures. In our backyard, on a homemade hammock, our daughter's in the center, and her friends, who are twins, are on the right and left. So in the Gita, Krishna also speaks of balance, that we will always have material responsibilities and spiritual aspirations, so we have to learn how to balance those 2 so that neither one is neglected. This is a lizard that the campers found, and they were very delighted by it. Now, these 2 campers found that they could take a gamsha, an Indian towel, and by holding it between them, they created a sail. And they sailed the entire length of Lake Sharanagati, which is 1 mile long. And when they got to the end, they were stuck. They didn't know how to tack to get back. This is part 3. We started with harmony within, then harmony with the earth and her creatures. So this perhaps is more challenging, harmony with other people. So the Gita, Krishna speaks about a great relationship destroyer called envy. Envy can wreck our chances for harmony, internally and externally. And Krishna also gives hints how to overcome this very destructive emotion. He says that by chanting his names, just as we were chanting during the Arti, by focusing on him, then we can feel pleasure in his presence and pleasure in the association of other servants of his, and in that way gradually overcome these very detrimental emotions. This is our daughter on her horse and her friend Rasa riding her horse. The 4th and final part of harmony in the Bhagavad Gita is the wellspring, or the source of harmony. And Krishna explains that from him comes an energy which is all-pervasive, a force, or you could say a light, a Brahman they call it in Sanskrit. But also another expansion of his is Paramatma, or the Supersoul, who resides in the heart of each living being as the overseer, the permitter, the guide, the friend, the most dear friend. And he is also Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences. This photograph was taken from the front porch of our home. Sometimes people hear about bears in Sharanagati and they become afraid. But in fact, these bears are afraid of people. When no one's looking, they come to our gardens and they eat our carrots and our apples. This is a very ambitious treehouse, but built by a 12-year-old who since has grown up in Sharanagati, and he married another Sharanagatiite. They built their own home. They now have 4 children, and this young man is now the president of Sharanagati village. The need of the spirit soul is that it wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill its desire for complete freedom. It wants to see the free light and the spirit. A quote from Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So in Sharanagati, we heat our homes with wood heat. Wood is available amply in the forests around Sharanagati. And for water, we found an aquifer at the base of the mountain. We put a pipe from the aquifer to our home. So the water is gravity fed. We don't need electricity for our water. These are the residents hearing from Mahabharata around the campfire, which is next to the lake. And this is changing bodies in Sharanagati. This lower picture was taken in the year 2000, and the upper one in 2011. So on the right is Rasa, 11 years apart. Next to her is her twin sister Kava. In the middle is Kalindi. Next to her is her younger sister Gopal, who was the shortest and became the tallest. And then on the left is our daughter, Haripriya. So this became this book, Harmony in the Bhagavad Gita. It got some good reviews by Krishna's grace. So while we were doing this, my husband and I were also making movies. We made about 8 different films about Srila Prabhupada and his followers and the culture that he introduced to the world over a period of 12 years. And I also made a short film, a 24-minute film about my journey. And then after all that was done, I really wanted to understand what had happened to me in my life, looking back on it. So I wrote this memoir that Hamangi Prabhu just mentioned. And I tried to dig deep because I went through a tremendous transformation in my life. My parents were both atheists. My mother was raised in the Roman Catholic tradition, and she felt it was simply ritual with no substance. And my father was raised in the Jewish tradition, and he came to a similar conclusion. So they raised my brother and me as atheists. And I noticed that my father worked very hard. He would work 14-hour days. He was very expert in what he did. And he went to Russia twice a year for his work. He spoke fluent Russian. Yet over the years, his business slipped away from him, which was very painful to see and very confusing. So I left that world entirely. This is John and me in this abandoned shed at 10,000 feet, really confused and empty and trying to understand life. I was surrounded by beauty, yet within I was so confused. And oddly enough, though everything was very new to me, I was very new to the people around me. The children especially. It was like if they thought if they stared at me long enough, they could figure me out. But I was very impressed by the culture of India. It was truly a culture of service. The older children served the younger children, the parents served the children, and I appreciated that very much. Also in the West, you can live next to somebody, you can be neighbors with somebody for decades and never get to know them. But in India, it was a very communal spirit. Everybody seemed to know everybody there, for better or worse. And I appreciated that also. It was much more personal, I found, than what I had experienced in the West. And in the cities, this traditional culture is being lost now. But it was very much present, I felt, in the villages in India. And it was inspiring. We used to travel for days sometimes on the trains, and we took some pictures from the train windows, and we got a little taste of agrarian life, how the people lived off the land. I was also, as I mentioned, very moved by this experience in Vrindavan. That I had come from this background of faithlessness, and it was in Vrindavan that I had some inkling that I was missing a dimension in life that was extremely important. And perhaps because I was missing that dimension, I was feeling this confusion and emptiness and dissatisfaction. So with that experience, I became open to the idea of a spiritual realm, to the idea of faith in that realm. I would sit every day for hours with these widows who were chanting the Maha Mantra. And it seemed to me that they felt really privileged to be there. Nowadays, from what I understand, families send unwanted women to Vrindavan. But when I was there, it seemed that these women actually wanted to leave the obligations and perhaps the distractions of family life so they could focus on spiritual life. And it really impressed me. I had seen chanting in the West, but it was such different circumstances that I didn't get the same feelings from it. The people were different, the environment was different. But it was in Vrindavan that I could really taste the flavor of faith, and what a sweet flavor that was. And meeting Prabhupada and hearing from him, I got an understanding of the philosophy behind it, and also I was able to associate with his followers. This is his sister, Prabhupada's sister Pishima, who used to visit us in the Calcutta temple very regularly. And Prabhupada himself took us to holy places in India. That's him at the head of the bus. He took us to Mayapur in West Bengal. Mayapur is the appearance place of Lord Chaitanya, who Lord Chaitanya introduced the chanting of Hare Krishna to the world. This is Prabhupada in his rooms in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar temple. He stayed in these rooms before he went to America, and he wrote the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam there. This is me in another body, receiving this Gayatri mantra from Srila Prabhupada. So, Bhakti Yoga is so nice that we can use our propensities in Bhakti. I began photographing Prabhupada and his followers. This picture we have on the wall in the temple. There's a little story behind it. I'll try to tell it quickly so we don't run out of time, but every afternoon Prabhupada would sit on the rooftop in the Juhu temple. There was a traditional flat rooftop, and there was a dais up there where he would sit, and he would meet with guests and have discussions. It was a very pleasant atmosphere, very relaxed. So one afternoon, I was there with my camera a little bit early, and it was just me and Prabhupada. I was sitting at his feet with my camera, and he looked at me and he said, "Where should I look?" So you got it right away. I had no idea what he was talking about, because he had never said anything like that to me before. So it took me a few seconds to think, oh, he's thinking where he should look so I can take the photograph. So finally I got it, and then I had to think of an answer. That was another problem. So after a few more seconds, I said, "Wherever you like, Srila Prabhupada." So he turned to his right, and that's the photograph on the wall here. That is the only time that that happened in 6 years of photograph, that he asked me that question, just once. This is in Mayapur. Prabhupada's godbrother, Srila Sridhar Swami, came to visit him. On the left, you see hands clapping like this. Those are the hands of Srila Sridhar Swami. They had a wonderful kirtan in Prabhupada's room. And Prabhupada, of course, introduced wonderful activities for his followers to be engaged in. In Mayapur, they would cook huge, huge woks of khichdi, very healthy, and then they would distribute it for free to all the villagers in the surrounding areas. And of course, he introduced Rath Yatra throughout the world, this glorious festival to bring Jagannath to the people. And throughout it all, I was very fortunate that I was able to photograph him. That's me on the left there. And although Prabhupada himself was very encouraging, as you can see, he's surrounded by male students, and sometimes they were not so encouraging. So that was my own obstacle that I had to deal with. And Prabhupada got letters from all over the world. Very often the letters would be full of complaints or problems. Devotees were having either internal problems or problems they were having with other students of his, or problems they were having managing the temple, or perhaps with the authorities in the area, legal problems with the mayor of the city or whatever. And he would always answer every letter that came to him, and it would be full, you can read them today, full of guidance and encouragement and inspiration. Even though so many things were landing on his head daily, somehow he managed to deal with it all. He had some remarkable students. This is Yamuna Devi. She wrote a cookbook that won an award as the best cookbook of the year in 1987. And it was the first time in the history of this award, the famous award, the Ben Franklin Award, that a vegetarian cookbook won that award. She was also an extraordinary singer. This is George Harrison with her. He told her that he could make her internationally famous because of the quality of her voice. And her response was that she simply wanted to serve Srila Prabhupada. She was not interested in fame and fortune. Is there an illustration for her cookbook, Milk and Milk Products? So in 1977, Prabhupada returned to Vrindavan. He was feeling very sick, very ill, and the residents were very concerned, as were his students. He was very frail, but he kept on translating, even in that condition. His consciousness was pristine. And he left this world November 14th, 1977, and left a legacy which is going strong to today. So all these thoughts and experiences became this book that recently was noticed by non-devotees. It got some good reviews. So, as we were doing these projects, my husband and I were also making this movie that Mangi Prabhu mentioned, Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. It's playing right now at the Gene Siskel Theater on State Street, and I humbly request each and every one of you to please go and see it. People who have seen it, both devotees and newcomers, just curious people, leave with a special sense of appreciation for Prabhupada, for his accomplishments, for his personality, for his teachings. There was one elderly woman in Houston who came to see it, and afterwards I spoke to her, and she said, you know, I have dreams in my life, but I was thinking, I'm so old now, I'm too old to do my dreams. But after seeing this film, I understand I'm not too old. I can also pursue my dreams. So there's something in the film for everyone. There was a 4-year-old boy in Denver who saw it, and even he enjoyed it. So, and everyone in between. So please take a little time out of your day. It's playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It ends on Thursday. So I hope there's some discussion. We have about 10 minutes left. I hope there's some discussion or some thoughts about these various points. So I think we need a microphone. Is there a microphone? Just please wait 1 second. We'll get a microphone so we can all hear you.
I don't think we have another microphone.
Oh, we don't? Oh. Should you take this one over there?
Okay. If you could please raise your hand. Who was speaking? Nobody could hear. If you could repeat, please.
Huh?
Oh, we couldn't hear you. If you could.
Oh my God. Repeat the same thing? Okay. I said it was a very nice, very extraordinary journey through you, and I enjoyed it very much because I had read his lot of books, and I have one where his whole thing, all these things are there, and part of it I was getting the glimpses. So I'm really very thankful to you that I got to see this through you. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is also just a comment that I have seen you first time. I have been hearing about your books, and really it is such a deep journey you are taking all of us through that it has touched my heart really, Mataji. And I would watch this movie on Thursday, and also I want your book, definitely. Thank you very much. I mean, in just a little time, you have touched my heart. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thanks for coming to Chicago. I saw the movie the other day. It's phenomenal. I got a lot out of it. It was very touching. And the work you've done has been very touching. I have one question, though, to ask you. As a woman in ISKCON, during that time that you, in the beginning and things of that nature, and with the feminist movement being very strong in America, how, did you have any problems, and how did you cope, psychologically? And what do you have to say to other women who may come and make, critical remarks about some of the things that they may read in Bhagavad Gita or purports or the Srimad Bhagavatam to, be critical? So that's my question. What kind of comments or what kind of insight do you have, and what can we say as we preach Krishna consciousness to women about some of the comments and negative comments that's been made?
Thank you. That's a good question. It was definitely challenging being a woman in Krishna consciousness, at least in the early days, because Prabhupada's young male followers, were coming from the West. When I started in Krishna consciousness, he did not have any disciples who were of Indian birth, right? So in the West, there's a great promiscuous culture. Means men and women interact freely. And there was, especially when Prabhupada came in the 60s, free sex was very popular. And so Prabhupada was introducing renunciation, means brahmachari life. And that was very difficult for the young men to go from being promiscuous to being celibate. And so many of them, in their immaturity, instead of being attracted to women, they became averse to women. It was just the same coin, just the other side. And so being a woman, or as women, followers of Prabhupada, we became the brunt of their aversion. And it was immaturity, and we all felt it was immaturity, but it didn't really make it any less painful. But fortunately, we had Prabhupada there, who was, of course, completely transcendental, to guide us and encourage us and help us see past what is actually trivial. Although without him, it would not have been trivial at all. It would have been Herculean. So as that, I think, answers part of your question. And the other part, as far as Prabhupada has some statements in his books that arouse animosity amongst especially women that read them, but also many men that read them. For instance, one that comes up a couple of times in the Gita is this statement, women are less intelligent. So my understanding of that, which took time to come to, was there's different types of intelligence. There's the intelligence referred to in that statement called buddhi, which refers to the ability to analyze. There's another type of intelligence, which is also mentioned in the Gita. Krishna says, among women, I am fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, and intelligence. That's a different word. English is a bit gross. We have one word, intelligence. Sanskrit is more refined. So you have different words for intelligence. So that word for intelligence is medha, medha. And that refers more to nurturing, kind of what we call emotional intelligence. So in fact, to be complete, both types of intelligence need to be there. If you simply have analysis with none of the nurturing qualities, it becomes very dry and becomes sometimes hard, which we've also experienced. Whereas if you have this nurturing emotional quality without the analysis, that can become sentimental. So you really need both to be properly guided. To have one or the other, you can miss out in a serious way. So that's one understanding. I mean, you practically have to go statement by statement, but there's ways to understand it, because you can see the beauty of what he's presenting and the completeness of it. Is that all right? Is that... Any other points that anyone would like to bring up? We have this young man, we're giving him exercise this evening.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji. Journey was very beautiful, and one point that really touched me a lot is regarding offering of food. Like first time this thing clicked very high to me, that when a child offers food to father, then it's really touching. So something on this part only, if you can discuss. It was really touching and beautiful. First time, like I've heard so much, but this was the first time when this thing struck a lot. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother Vikasa, for the wonderful exhibition of talent and eloquence, and your experience is just marvelous. One thing that I would like to comment is about my understanding of the movie is that I saw the men, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, the man with his frailties and doubts, that with determination, divine intervention, he pulled this whole thing off. And if there's going to be a second or sequel of the movie, because I think there are some things that are missing in the story.
Right now we're simply focused, my husband and I, we're simply focused on promoting the film. We're not thinking of a sequel. Our ambition is to have this film put on Netflix. Netflix has a subscriber base of 94 million people. So one of the things that Netflix looks at when they're deciding whether or not to carry a film is the theatrical attendance for that film. So besides all of you going to hear Prabhupada's story, you will help the Netflix people be influenced to take the film by attending the theater. So it's yet another reason to go. Thank you very much. There is one small thing that to cover the costs, very heavy costs of producing and distributing this film, we had these T-shirts made. They say spiritual revolutionary, and you'll see that the word, there's a word here in orange. That word is love. Spiritual revolutionary and love. And the back is the name of the film. So as fate would have it, we've sold all the t-shirts we brought except this one. And this one happens to be an extra large. So if anyone who is extra large is interested, we have this one t-shirt left. And also, apparently, Amangi Prabhu is saying there's some books available in the gift store if you have interest in that. Hare Krishna. So I think there's some announcements that we're supposed to make. Yes.
So I'll quickly turn it over to Balaram Prabhu, who has an important announcement about this Tuesday.
Hare Krishna. So I did watch this movie on Friday, and we have been hearing about Srila Prabhupada's contribution and all the great sacrifices that he has done. I think this movie so wonderfully gives us a glimpse to what Srila Prabhupada went through to give us Krishna consciousness. How much compassion and mercy can a Vaishnava has is so beautifully demonstrated through this beautiful movie. One of Srila Prabhupada's intense desire was he wanted to give us Krishna. He wanted to make us self-realize. One theme that repeatedly came in the movie was Prabhupada talking, Prabhupada's lectures that were clipped in the movie was Prabhupada emphasized on realizing yourself. Prabhupada wanted to make us happy. He wanted to give us this happiness that he possessed and that he struggled hard. In material world we see, if you are happy, you don't want to give that happiness to others. You want to show off that, hey, I am more happier than you, and you never share the secret. But here is Srila Prabhupada, he's sharing that secret openly, and how much struggle he had to go through to give us that happiness. And in that spirit, Srila Prabhupada emphasized on festivals. Because what does festival give us? Festival brings us all together, and unitedly it gives us an opportunity to serve Krishna and his devotees. And one such festival is the Janmashtami festival, the divine appearance of Sri Krishna, which is a big festival in every ISKCON temple, glorifying Krishna's appearance in this material world. And like every year, devotees here within our society here in Chicago put a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices to give each one of us an experience that will bring us closer to Krishna. So in that spirit, we appeal and we would invite all of you to come to this wonderful festival. Many of us will just show up, but the most important thing, if you really want to get benefited by this festival, is you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to what is happening on that day. So the festivities actually starts today. This beautiful presentation that Her Grace Vishakha Devi did, it's basically giving us that, I should say, an experience of what festivities should be, and in what mood we should celebrate this festival. So we would like to invite all of you to come forward and not only just be present here, but give your hearts to this festival. And one theme that Srila Prabhupada emphasized was to cultivate this mood of service. So we have to come forward and offer ourselves. There are so many opportunities that day that we can all do little bit. It's not on just one person's shoulder. Because sometimes we see, oh, that devotee is doing it, so it's his business. But look out. When you are here that day, there are devotees going to be doing a lot of things. So just ask anybody, is there any way I can serve you? That's what real happiness is all about. And that's what is going to please Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So we request you to please, if you are already ready to do some service, there is a table outside. You can register your name. There are a list of services. You can register your name and you can come on a certain time and offer your service that day. That's what will give you real joy. That's why I said you have to be attentive that day. When you come in, look for opportunity to serve, and that will bring pleasure to Srila Prabhupada, because when Srila Prabhupada will see that here is all the struggle that I went through, and here are the devotees, here are guests who are coming to offer seva to my beloved Lord Shri Krishna, that will give him a lot of pleasure. And we exist here in this temple and this community to give pleasure to Srila Prabhupada. So let us do that. There are various opportunities in the form of some sponsorships. Right? I mean, usually the moment you hear the word sponsorship, oh, here we go. They're going to ask for money again. Right? Srila Prabhupada said that this body can be purified by bathing. Your mind can be purified by chanting mantras. The wealth that we earn can be purified by charity. So I'm sure many of us have wealth, some shape or form. So the way we can purify our wealth is by charity. So again, there won't be any better day than the Supreme Lord's appearance where you can do some charity. So there are various opportunities. There's a list, long list. I don't want to drain that list, but if you're willing, again, please see, there's the devotee Gajendra Moksha Prabhu. So you can come and see him. He can very wisely engage you in some charitable activities for Janmashtami. So again, please keep your open hearts and come on that festival on Janmashtami and chant, dance, and then opportunity for us to all be happy. It's a weekday, so I know there may be most of us will be working, but again, it's a day of celebration, so take a day off. Tell your boss it's the opportunity that we are celebrating God's appearance. So again, thank you for your kind attention. Now we'll have prasadam upstairs. If you have any questions about the festival or about any particular event that's going to happen that day, please come and either see me or Gajendra Moksha Prabhu. Yashodhan Prabhu has some announcement. Hare Krishna.
Two quick things. One, on behalf of Gauramani Prabhu and the planning committee, they want to extend their gratitude to everyone who came out in support of the Bud Billiken parade yesterday. It was a huge success. Lots of people received the holy name and access to Srila Prabhupada's teachings who don't have as easy access to it as we do. So thank you to everybody. Second thing, today's Sunday feast is sponsored by Harish Prabhu and Vrajarani Priya Mataji in honor of their expected new addition to their family. So a kind request from them to please offer your prayers for this child's safe delivery, as well as your blessings that their son can grow up in a nice Krishna conscious way. Hare Krishna. For anyone that is here for the first time, please see me, we have a small gift for you. Also, if you're not familiar with the temple layout, dinner is served out those double doors and up to the top of the staircase. So now is the feast portion of the Sunday feast. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna
Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare
श्रील प्रभुपाद की